Earth. I'm Kevin Sykowski. I'm a professor at the University of Toledo in the Department of Geography and Planning. And, share my screen. And if everybody could mute their stuff while others are talking, and when you want to talk, unmute it. Mute in the lower left corner. So that would be helpful. Actually, earlier today, I think I've had a Bermuda Triangle of technology around me today, and Ben and Mike know earlier things didn't go perfectly for the fall conference here today. Anyway, Jen, I think I was in control of your computer.
Oh, I put you as the spotlight video. You want me to cancel that?
Oh, you could, yeah. Like I said, I have a slide going. But I mean, earlier today when we had another meeting. So I'll share my screen. I'm hearing a lot of background noise. Someone's is doing it. All right, so here we are. So today's about asking a good research question. And just to remind you, this is from Mission Earth. We're funded through NASA cooperative agreement using GLOBE and NASA assets. All right, and there's our partners, Boston University, WestEd, Berkeley, Tennessee State, and NASA, specifically NASA Langley in Virginia. And then here's our speakers today. Yeah, a second. So I'm going to have more technology issues. I even have power cords that aren't working. It's all crazy. All right, so we have Steve Frantz from Roswell Kent Middle School. Well, myself, I'll talk, but then Sarah, I'm not sure how much Sarah's going to talk tonight, but Diana, John's her students, and then Jennifer Bourgeault is going to talk about the virtual science here. Oops, I went too far. All right, well, anyway, this is what I just said. So here's our outline for today. And just going, reiterate, we want to have students doing projects with GLOBE data, linking it to NASA if they can, and getting them out to present at various venues. And so here are some of the places they can present. As I mentioned, Jen's going to talk about the virtual science fair later. Then we have the regional science fairs in the U.S. Again, the Midwest one is going to be at Purdue in May. And then the annual meeting. So there's another place where you can present, have students present their projects. I hope everybody can. So one of the things that is challenging for teachers, there's lots of science fairs that go on, and actually there's research that says science fairs aren't good for kids. And so there's a lot of professors are against science fairs, some teachers are too. And so in that climate, we want GLOBE kids to do science projects. And we don't have to call it a science fair, but kind of the idea. Some of the challenges, though, is when science fairs happen at schools, the kids go to a website, and what do they find? How much popcorn pops is a real common project. And I judge probably close to 10 science fairs a year, and I see at least 5 to 10 popcorn popping projects at every science fair. Also, I think another challenge is teachers expect most of it to be done at home. And I know with my own kids, I would get the flyer 3 weeks before the science fair. Here's all the stuff, do the science fair project. And it's like, whoa, and then the parents end up doing a lot of the work. And we don't want that. We want the kids to do the work because then that's how they learn the best. And to some degree, the poster appearance kind of takes higher value than the substance of the project itself. And in my family, that's my mom. She comes right around science fair time every year. And she was a teacher for 30 years and retired. And, my kids do a scientific project for their poster, sometimes GLOBE, sometimes not. And then she says, well, it looks horrible. And then there's this whole panic to make it look nice. Actually, I like black letters on white background. And that's how, in scientific presentations, we try to do it. Another thing that I just wanted to bring up is kids kind of don't worry about all these important things like protection of animals and humans. So they'll test animals and things, and then they'll maybe do tests on humans. So there's actually pretty strict guidelines for if you test animals, you have to submit an IACUC, which that's actually IACUC. Sorry, I misspelled that. And then for humans, you have to go through the IRB process. So it kind of eliminates a lot of projects. If you really follow the guidelines, you shouldn't really do animal or human projects. Okay, so anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about as far as like starting things off. And what we're going to do later, I'll hopefully lead some discussion about science topics or, science fair projects. So I think now we have Diana's students. We're going to talk first about how they put together their project and the question.
Yeah, I'll do a quick introduction for them. So if any of you were on our previous webinar, you saw these two amazing young ladies, Diana John students out of Crestwood High School in Dearborn Heights, Michigan. And the last time they gave a real good overview on how to conduct aerosols testing, and they showed us the equipment, they showed us their school grounds, along with some of their fellow students. So what we've asked them to do this time is to get a little bit more in depth into their research and specifically talk a little bit about how they got interested in the aerosols testing in the first place and how they managed to develop their research question, which is the focus of this webinar. So with that, if ladies, you'd like to unmute yourselves and then share your screen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yara Komeha.
I'm Farah Chama, and this is our research project on aerosols. So the title of our project—
Can you guys get closer to your microphone?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, there you go. That's better.
Okay. So our research project was titled Influence of Select Atmospheric Data on Winter Ground Level Aerosol Measurements Using Handheld Photometers. The way we arrived to our research question, so typically arrival to the question is like the hardest part because you need something to stem your interest and to get into something you're very you're willing to go and dig deeper into. So one of the ways that we actually got to this project was 2 years ago. I attended the LA, the 19th annual GLOBE conference in Los Angeles, California. And while we were there, I met Danielle DeSterke, and she is actually in charge of aerosols for Frantz. So Frantz is one of the biggest producers of one of the globe or the sun photometers called the Toledo. So when we were there, she talked to me about this device, and through talking to her, I was kind of just confused and wanted to know more about the topic. And on top of that, two of my friends who were attending the conference with me had actually done their research on aerosols, but hadn't dug as deep as I had wanted to. So I used that to stem from my personal interest into it.
Also, the year before, we took a lot of data for random GLOBE protocols. We took air temperature, relative humidity, barometric pressure, surface temperature, and we just took a bunch of data so that when we found out that aerosols was also one of the protocols and we wanted to look into that, we wanted to know if there would be if they had anything to do with each other or if they were all just random. So we teamed together and we came towards our research project with all these path stems.
Okay. So we set up three null hypotheses to begin our research. Our first one was that there was no relationship between percent cloud coverage, wind speed, particulate matter, barometric pressure with aerosol optical thickness.
Our second one, that there would be no relationship between latitude of whatever site and the AOT values.
And then our third one was that there are no variation in AOT readings of a Calitu sun photometer and a GLOBE sun photometer. So aerosol optical thickness, just to specify, is actually it's a way to measure aerosols, like to standardize it. So it's like the thickness of aerosols in the sky.
Mr. Frantz, I need doing a PowerPoint.
So
Should I just end it?
Okay, so we had our site chosen because of the year before, the students who conducted their research. So we did the same spot, and we would go outside every day during solar noon and see if the sun was out for us to take data.
yeah, so we left school during this time and tried to test it out. And then, so we have two devices that we use to test aerosol optical thickness or for aerosols. And the one on the left you see is the GLOBE sun photometer. And then the one on the right was the CLE2. And then finally, the last step of our investigation would be filling out the data sheet as we took our data. So we just took the typical protocols, and we also did aerosols, obviously. And then we inputted this into the GLOBE website and made our own Excel spreadsheet. So our methods consisted of every single day we'd go to the same location to standardize that. So we had a flag put up. You can see it in the bottom right corner, kind of. So we had a pink flag that said GLOBE all over it, and we had it stuck so that we'd go out into that area every single day. And then when we went outside, we also did the GLOBE atmospheric protocols. So for specific things, so aerosols, air temperature, barometric pressure, clouds, and relative humidity were all used through GLOBE protocols.
We also used the weatherbook system, which sent data directly to GLOBE. And for, I think, barometric pressure and sometimes for relative humidity, we also used it. We referenced it back to get data from days that we didn't have.
And then the last thing we used was the Vernier lab quests with like the temperature probe and the pressure sensor. So that was how we collected our data. The weatherbug system too, I just want to stress, was it was actually really good for where we were working because of the fact that our data has its own station. And so we were able to collect data like from exactly where we were most times.
Okay, so this shows our data. So we have on the x-axis the AOT for red and green, and then on the y it shows particulate matter. And
there's 2.5 and then there's 10. So it just depends on, those are depending on size. So we wanted to see how they correlated back with the AOT value depending on color and wavelength. As you can see on our graphs though, the R-squared value is very low, showing very little like correlation, and there's no connection between the two.
Okay, here we have cloud coverage versus AOT. And then on the bottom graphs, it shows the barometric pressure versus the AOT values for both green and red wavelengths.
These ones, again, you see a little bit more of a correlation, I guess, but not strong enough still. Our R-squared values are still too low for us to actually find any association between the two.
And then last, we have the wind speed versus the AOT for, again, both red and green wavelengths.
And so once again, our R-squared value is very, very low. So we can't say that any of the variability in any of the protocols that we were testing is accounted for by our AOT values.
This graph shows we tried correlating our data with one school in Israel, and we only used the green AOT. Oh, the bottom shows the...
So we tested it based off like day versus AOT. So it's like how, depending on the day, it was like here versus there, and how our AOT values kind of varied based off.
So the bottom shows all the days, and then the x-axis basically, and the y shows the AOT value. And ours were the red, and then theirs was the blue, and ours was lower than theirs for the green AOT values.
The reason we ended up using green AOT was because aerosols are measured, or the way you measure them with each device is based off of wavelength. So for our green AOT, we were using the CLE2 sun photometer for all of our data, and it was 619 nanometers, while the one that the school in Israel was using was 625 nanometers. So that was the closest like in difference between the two. So we tried to use like similar numbers. So our conclusions, so through our data or research, we found we failed to reject our first null hypothesis. So we couldn't support that there was no correlation between AOT and the atmospheric factors.
And then our second null hypothesis, we also failed to reject because after examining the p-value, between the Israel school and us, it was difficult to know if there was any relationship in general between the AOT, between similar latitudes and different latitudes.
The third one we couldn't test because at the time that we were taking our data, the GLOBE photometer, it gives you back the data in voltage, so it's not the AOT value. And we had a problem with the website when we were inputting the data that it wouldn't give us back the AOT, so we couldn't use it at the time that we were testing all of our data, but now it's working, so we could.
So it's hard to reference back, and so that kind of stifled us, I guess.
Okay, so we talked to Dr. David Brooks, who created the GLOBE Sun photometer, after we analyzed all our data, and we Skype called him, and he told us that the atmospheric parameters are all very local, and aerosols are a global phenomenon. So the data we were getting, it shouldn't have correlated because like the whole local versus global. So he kind of truthed our data in a way and made sense of our results.
So yeah, we felt more confident after he told us everything. And then our second expert was Dr. Margaret Pippin from NASA Langley Research Center. So Dr. Margaret Pippin was very, very, very helpful. Like I can't begin to explain. She looked through all our data and she was able to retrieve it from the GLOBE website for us and let us know. She helped us analyze it. So she looked through it and you'll see on the next slide, she actually caught a really cool instance where our data like felt valuable in some way. And she's been conducting campaigns and stuff and keeping in touch with us to promote aerosols.
So one of the biggest things with our results that Dr. Pippin helped us find was that the big fire in Alberta that happened was actually, you could see it in our data, like the fire affected the aerosols measures that we took.
So if you see in our graphs, all of our blue, green, and red aerosol data, all of them are very like clumped together most of the time. But on one specific day, it was like only a few days after the Alberta fire, we saw that they actually spaced out based off particulate matter. So we found that was cool, like that it came from the fire. So our research is researching aerosols is significant for many reasons. And one of the biggest things is that many of the times that we do research aerosols or we get these measurements of what the aerosols are, they're from satellite images in space. So satellites, as everything, when you take a picture from something very far away, you get to see the whole, but then when you want to zoom into a specific spot like our city, Dearborn Heights, you start to see that it gets a little pixelated and you can't really see it. It's very like coarse. But by us taking data, we get to like enhance this small area in the image and get to see if this overall picture is contributing to us as well. So it goes from like coarse grain to fine grain.
There's also a lot that aerosols play a role in climate change, except we don't really know much about them or how it affects it. So keeping up with this data and taking a lot of it is gonna help like understanding the role of aerosols and how they play a role in climate change more.
We had a few limitations we were faced with during our research project, which was why we didn't get to see as many results as we hoped to. One of them was that daily measurements weren't possible due to weather conditions sometimes because of the fact aerosols are only able to be taken when it's very sunny out, the sun is shining. That way the devices actually record the data. When we would go out, we had 40 days that we went out to actually test, like around 40 days. We only got 17 days of actual data with our devices because of the fact that we're from Michigan and Michigan is known to have variable weather and like you don't ever know if what's going to happen. So yeah, so we didn't get to do 40 back-to-back days. Instead, we had 17 scattered days within our time period.
Also, if you see to the map on the right, the brown dots are the only schools that are taking or have taken aerosol data
and inputted into the GLOBE website.
And one of them actually is us in Michigan. So it was very hard to try to find another school to compare latitudes and how that like might change the AOT value.
So yeah, we feel like we don't have schools to compare to. There's really nothing we can do about that. Yeah.
University of Toledo, we started putting data in now.
Oh yeah. So you're gonna be on the new map. This was at our time.
This was before.
Okay, and then one of our last limitations that we faced was at the time when we were taking our data was the GLOBE website wasn't working properly in terms of inputting aerosol data, and so we couldn't convert our voltage from our GLOBE sun photometer into AOT values. So that kind of limited our conversion between the Cali-2 and the Cali-2 in the GLOBE sun photometer. But thankfully that's all fixed now. So you guys can
roller in the picture.
yeah, if you look down in the bottom right picture, that's us with roller. He's tech support kind of for GLOBE and he's great. So yeah, he fixed all that problem and he worked with us to do that. Yeah, and then these are certifications.
Cool. You know, some of the things that I'd like others to take home is you contacted scientists. And I wanted to emphasize the student-teacher-scientist partnership. That would be good to have. If everybody could have that with their projects, that'd be great.
I think working with scientists is so important, and like the whole process, you get to learn what they have, and you kind of build up your understanding of everything.
Yeah, and we actually have a whole bunch of scientists in GLOBE that are interested in working with students. So students aren't bothering the scientists.
Yeah,
they actually want to do it. Does anybody have any questions for Farah and Yara? Up here and up here. Oh, yeah. So Sarah just put that in chat, the same thing.
Thanks, Sarah.
I just wanted to say real quick, it seems like it was quite the scientific roller coaster. You're collecting data, lots of data, no correlations, and then you actually find out that no correlations was a good thing. Right?
Yeah, that was actually, because we looked at all our graphs and we were like, oh my God, we did something wrong. Like we were sitting here like on her bedroom floor like at midnight and we're like all panic mode, like nothing's working. And then we contacted David Brooks, and then he like actually answered, and I'm like, oh my God, like the whole thing was just so crazy.
It was nice that everything added up in the end, because you start to doubt yourself, and then we did everything right. We followed the protocols. What is going on? But yeah, no, everything added up, and just it's like overall the research taught us a lot, so that was good.
So I had a question. It was, is a low AOT, so it's atmospheric optical thickness, is a low value mean the sky is clear or has a lot of particulate or aerosols in it?
You know, that question came up a lot for us, and it was annoying because of the fact that we couldn't, there wasn't a lot of reference material for us to look back at. There wasn't a lot of people publishing about it. I think we found out in the end that low AOT was clear sky. Yeah, it was better to have lower aerosols, optical thickness. So that means clear sky, and high means dark, obscure, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Thank you.
You've got a question here from Jim. I think that's Jim Less. Yeah. Interesting project. Thought it might be useful to check with local EPA or MDEQ, meaning the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality Air Pollution Agencies, to see if they had data that would correlate with your data. Did you guys think about that at all?
We tried to look at a few websites actually to reference back to, what did we go to? The Michigan Air Quality?
Michigan Air Quality is what we ended up for. Particulate matter, we found, yeah, we used that.
I think we got wind speed maybe. I don't remember.
We tried using satellite data, I think.
There was a few websites actually. We were trying to find a lot of correlations between, like we were talking about ground truthing data. So we were trying to see how we correlated back with them. And many times actually, like we tried and then their data wasn't lining up with the days or stuff like that. So that was a major issue for us. But yeah, I think that would be cool to look into more air pollution types. So we'll look into that hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Jim also says he likes the use of statistics in your presentation. He's worried his own students, being freshmen, because they haven't had much exposure to statistics yet.
The thing, this is actually my first year of stats. The R squared and stuff is actually pretty simple. We started learning about it in chemistry last year while we were doing our project. So it came in very like
Perfect timing.
Yeah, we're like, yes, we know how to do linear regression. But yeah, no, it's not that difficult. The thing is, we also reached out to a few people. Like we had a few like people who had taken stats or teachers that we talked to make sure they could check and
we made
teach us.
sure we like were understanding what we were getting, that we weren't just like plotting points at one point.
Yeah, so that helped a lot.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Mike Javat brought up something. I think this was also talked about on the last webinar about AeroNet could be a source of data as well.
Yeah, actually, that's the website we use, Aeronaut. We tried to look through that. I don't know, something happened.
I don't remember what happened, but I think we tried using it and then something didn't line up for us. I just don't remember.
We were very enthusiastic in our approach. We tried to do everything with aerosols at once. So we did like Aeronaut. We tried to do, we had 3 null hypotheses.
Yeah.
We just did everything at once. So yeah, so that was one thing. That was, if we were hoping to continue our project or have someone continue this year and look into aerosols, we wanted to do more in that route and just check it with other like bigger sources, I guess.
And you actually have someone that is going to carry the torch on, right?
Yeah.
They actually started with the aerosols campaign. So there's a lot of students taking data right now.
Yeah, we're inputting data on daily, so it's great. The kids are so into it too, so it's like, I like that.
Yeah, they're like running around with data sheets. They're like, I need to get out of class and input this data.
So yeah.
All right, so one of the last comments that we had there is just that how cool it was to see that your data could be correlated with the fire. And that was one of the things that stood out to me too. And I think it really emphasizes what Dr. C says is, you know, when you reach out to some of the GLOBE community, some of the GLOBE scientists, and you can find out sometimes amazing connections like this. And that's exactly, your research is an example of that, a great example of that.
I completely agree with you. I think that if we hadn't talked to Dr. Pippin, we would have never found that like our data had something in it underlying that we never would have seen. And just, it was very, like, I think that was one of the coolest parts of the whole project, just noticing that we noticed like something, there was something in there.
Even like getting to talk to them, like when we first started emailing them, we did not think they were going to answer us back. We were like, no, they have better things to do with their life than to answer a bunch of students about aerosols. Except like Dr. Pippin and Dr. David Burke, they were so into it. Like they were answering really fast and they were asking us questions and making sure that we had everything
And
down.
they still reach out to this day, and that's what I find amazing is that it wasn't like the project ended and they stopped. They just keep talking to us, and I think that's phenomenal. So.
That's great. So last thing here, so Jen Bourgeault says actually that this is the 25th anniversary of the U.S.-Canada Air Quality Agreement. I didn't know that. That's cool. So your research has perfect timing.
Oh, yay. I'm glad.
So great job, girls. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your evening here. I know you all are busy with your college applications and everything. So good luck with all of that, and thank you all for the hard work, as well as your teacher too.
Of course. Thank you so much, Sarah, for everything that you've done for us.
Sure.
Okay, so now we're going to have Steve Frantz talk about his how he worked with his students to do projects and coming up with questions. So Steve.
Okay, I'm unmuting and I think I'm getting my share screen up and going.
All right.
Okay, am I good?
There you go. I can see it.
Okay, so I'm Steve Frantz. I'm at Roswell Kent Middle School, which is in Akron, Ohio. We are one of the Big 8 urban districts in Ohio. And this is, oh gosh, I think this is our 11th year doing GLOBE at Roswell Kent. We're kind of heartbroken because it was just announced they're closing our school after this school year. So yeah, I know. So we have, 11 years worth of data, and now we're going to have to move homes. So it's really neat to have this data set, but we're kind of heartbroken over all that. But anyway, we're looking at, where we might be next year and trying to work through all the kinks and hurdles that go along with that. What I'm going to do is just kind of shows some of the things that our students have done over the course of the last 10 years. And it's kind of like for me, it was kind of cool because I'm digging through like old pictures and kind of having a little stroll down memory lane of some of the really cool things that GLOBE has been able to provide for our students over the course of the last 10 years. So good. So I'm starting off, and I kind of named this traditional, and these are traditional science fairs. Like Kevin mentioned earlier, there's definitely some issues with them. I think they have some merit. I mean, it gives the kids chances to present. But one thing that I noticed with science fair, I'm so glad that the girls reached out to Dr. Brooks and Dr. Pippin, because my kids in the inner city, they don't have a neighbor that's a doctor. And when we go to science fairs, so many times we'll see boards and they'll have, the student's name, and then they'll have, 1, 2, 3, 4 PhDs that worked along with that student on their project. And my kids just don't have that opportunity in their neighborhoods. So we're going through a process of, we call it shopping for a doctor. So we're going to be using the GLOBE Scientist Network as they're trying to see who's available and trying to find some fits for the projects they're doing. So we're really excited about trying this is new for us, but to really be able to have the kids work with a professional in the field and ramp up their game quite a bit. So I'm glad that those girls reached out to Dr. Brooks, Dr. Pippin, because that's what we're going to be looking to try to do this year with our students as well. We start off with a traditional science fair. It's for the city of Akron. North High School is one of our high schools. And as in science fairs, it's pretty crowded. And, the kids show up and they get a couple people. Usually they're university students come and talk to them for about anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, and then they're done for the day. So it's a really quick in and out. They talk to 2 people, and that's about the end of it. We were kind of a little dismayed this past year. One of the comments my student actually got was, you only did research, you did not make anything. So we were kind of, yeah, we're trying to encourage them to do research. So anyway, we get some really different comments, let's say, along the way. But there is, I don't know, I still think that there's value for the kids to be able to present. They really get jazzed up for these events, and they're like super, super, super nervous at these events. If they score high enough, then of course they can go on to district science fair, which is a very similar format. And then if they score high enough, then they can go on to state science day at the Ohio State University. And this young lady received a superior, and she's actually presenting her research now in front of our school board in recognition of her achievement at State Science Day. And one of the benefits of State Science Day, if you get a superior there, then you're actually invited to the Ohio Academy of Science annual meeting, where it's a poster presentation, where you're there with your poster and people mingle, and it's very informal. But for the kids, they're just presenting time and time and time and time again and answering questions, and it's very, very, very interactive for them. They're standing, most of the students there are either in high school or university. There are some college professors that will have their research on display as well. One of the other things that's a result of this is they do get their research published in the Ohio Journal of Science, which is really, I mean, I teach, I've never been published in a peer-reviewed journal, but having my students being published in a peer-reviewed journal, which is really, really, really awesome. And, going through all that editing and the peer review process, I've learned so much going through with my students. So that's a really, really benefit to this. Another science fair, more traditional, this is run by Intel, the Intel Science Fair Group, and this is our Northeast Ohio Science and Engineering Fair. It's a little bit different in that the kids are with their project for about 3.5 hours, and then they get randomly judged. So it's kind of odd because some kids might get judged once in 3.5 hours, and some kids might get judged 20 times in 3.5 hours. So, you know, when I talk to my students, they're like, I got judged, 8 times, and the next kid's like, I only got judged twice. So there's this disparity of judging there, but they do fairly well at the NEOSEF. So it's one of those mixed emotions. But then we get into more non-traditional science fairs. And if I can just back up 1 second, some of the spinoffs of kids presenting at science fairs, I've had them take their research and do presentations at like Audubon Society meetings. The Sons of the American Revolution were interested. Of course, the school board I mentioned, the Chemical Society of Akron. They get featured in articles in the Akron Beacon Journal, and we even had a live radio broadcast one time with a group of students that were involved in these fairs. So there are some spin-offs that are pretty cool and really rewarding experience for the students. This is Dr. Sikowski's conference in Toledo, and I call this a little more non-traditional. It's kids get to talk to kids, which is really cool, and it's just kind of this. It's a lot more casual. Obviously, it's a lot more spread out, and while the kids are really excited, by the end of the evening, they're a lot more relaxed about being able to people talk to them and them being able to talk to other kids in their projects as well. And in my class, I do a 7th to 8th graders. There's 2 grade levels in the same class. So a lot of my 7th graders pick up ideas for their 2nd year project because they're interacting with the other students much more readily. We were invited several years ago to a regional America View. In fact, Dr. Sikowski invited us to come. And this was kind of interesting for the kids because it was a fall meeting, and their projects all ended the previous spring. So this was 6 months after the fact that they went back into their project and brushed up on what they had learned, and that was pretty cool for the kids that this stuff, it really doesn't ever end, so to speak. And they got to revisit their work. And it was kind of neat because they're standing shoulder to shoulder, once again, with university students and college professors presenting their research here as well. And they were really, really, really jazzed up about this. It was pretty cool experience, very relaxed, informal, but a lot of questions asked. It was really neat. I think this all revolves around Kevin and all his work that he does with providing a lot of these opportunities. But this was at his teacher workshop in the summer, and I had 3 of my students come up and do a presentation, work with some of the teachers at his summer teacher workshop. So it's pretty cool when you can get young people mentoring adults and kind of doing that role reversal with the kids. They talk about this for a long time about teaching the teachers, and that's pretty cool with the kids. This is the Globe Midwest Regional, which we just did last year. I know Jen's going to talk more about this here in a few minutes, but again, this was an overnight opportunity for the kids to do their research, present their research, and do a college visit, all wrapped up into one visit. So again, it was pretty cool. And these are just some of the events they did while they were there. And I don't know what the meaning of all this is, but they had fun. And then I think it was already mentioned, getting our kids to annual partner meetings. And I know Kevin's been pushing for this, and I've kind of been putting bugs in his ears as well about getting kids in front of adults and ramp everybody's game up that way. And, this past summer, I was lucky enough to have one of my students' name drawn, and we got a stipend, a very nice stipend from GLOBE to be able to help offset the cost of taking. I took 3 students to Colorado this past summer, and they're mixed in with a bunch of kids that were there from all over the world, and they're still, the kids are still communicating with each other, through email and whatnot, and it is just pretty cool that, they still keep in communication with each other. I was kind of run through these just pictures that the kids took, that I took, of their time in Colorado. The year before, I actually had the 4 girls in the picture were, and I'll get to GLOBE learning experiences here in a minute, but they were selected to go to New Delhi, and because of visa issues, they weren't able to go. So we kind of did a makeup for them and got them to the annual partner meeting in Los Angeles. Again, had a great time. They're still communicating with people that they met along the way. And just, a few of the pictures from Los Angeles. And of course, if you're not from Ohio, they're spelling out OHIO, which is kind of a classic Ohio thing we do. I took one student to the annual partner meeting in Minneapolis. And again, she's at her poster presentation. There's some 5th grade students to the left and my students to the right. And it was pretty cool because she presented her work in front of and how to take protocols in front of a group of adults from all over the world. It was a very, very powerful moment for her. And it was neat because her dad got to go, and her dad's like, I couldn't believe she could do anything like this. So it was really, really moving for the father to see his daughter, who was in 8th grade at the time, addressing a mixed group of adults at the annual meeting. And then we have the GLOBE Learning Expeditions. I had 4 students selected back in 2008 to go to Cape Town, South Africa. And this is very, very, very student-centered. And there were well over 100 students there from all over the world. And it was like every day was strictly activities for the students. I think, Dr. C, you might have been in some meetings while we were having fun with the kids. But really, really, really an unbelievable time, a world away for us. And these are just some pictures from South Africa. There's our Ohio gear. If you hear me yell, it's because the World Series is on right now. Some of the other things we follow with GLOBE is we do follow the Mount Kilimanjaro trek, and we do that virtually on the computer. And it's pretty cool. One day we were selected to be the school of the day, so I had students in my room all day long. They loved it because they got to skip their other classes, but they were answering questions all day long. So that was a pretty cool experience. We try and enter the GLOBE calendar competition, and we've had kids selected twice to have their artwork published in a GLOBE calendar. And it's really, really cool for those kids involved to see, my goodness, my gracious, my pictures in a calendar, my artwork's in a calendar, and it's actually published like that. It is, again, really powerful stuff for the kids involved. The girls who went to Los Angeles were invited to present at the Science Education Council of Ohio at the Science Teacher Institute. And maybe Janet can correct me, but as far as I know, they were the first students to actually present at a SECO meeting. So anyway, they did a great job. And again, it's getting kids out in front of adults was really, really cool. And the adults, they're just, always amazed and ask really great questions of the kids. Some of the other events we do is we do take a trip to the Great Lakes Science Center. We go down to the Challenger Learning Center in Wheeling, West Virginia, and it's a NASA spaceflight simulator. I think there's one in Toledo as well. And then the kids call this works in progress, and I have them for 7th and 8th grade, and then they go on into high school. And in Akron City, and I'm sure in other larger districts, we have a wide variety of high schools. And, you know, when my kids, my students, they fill out their applications, I mean, their resume is just heads and tails above a normal, everyday middle school student. And like right now, actually today we had a visit from our STEM high school trying to recruit kids. Last week we had a visit we have an early college, it's called Akron Early College Program. And then, of course, we have international baccalaureate programs as well. And my students apply to these, and when you look at, especially like the Akron Early College, the number of GLOBE alumni that are in that program is, I mean, just unbelievable. How many of my former students go on to go into these very, very, very nice high school programs. So I do have students that we know have gone into college and gone into the sciences. So I know that, you know, our efforts through GLOBE are paying off long term. Here they are doing research on potato chips. And, you know, who knows, we may be seeing them on Mars one day. And I'm sure this is the end of my little presentation. And I know Jen's going to talk more about the regional, but can't say enough about it. The kids had a great time. And thank you very much for inviting me to speak tonight. Go Tribe.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, as everyone can tell, he does a ton of stuff with the kids, and the class is a project-oriented class. So they're doing projects the entire time. They're asking questions, gathering data, answering those questions. Does anybody have any questions for Steve? Steve, you could you could unshare your screen.
Okay.
I think that did it.
Yep. Thank you. I'll mute myself so you don't hear me screaming at the TV when the Indians make a mistake.
They won the game already, so.
Yeah, but they're down 2-0 right now, so.
Oh, I see. All right. I just wanted to see, what's that Vaughn guy throw out the first pitch or something, but from Major League.
Yeah, that would have been funny.
Yeah. Charlie Sheen, I think.
Charlie Sheen, yeah.
So actually, we could move on then to Jen Bourgeault. Have Jen talk about the opportunities for projects. Jen, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right, great. So let's see if I can get this working. All right. Am I good?
Looks good.
Okay. So tonight I'm talking about the International Virtual Science Symposium. And then it looks like in a few weeks I'll be talking about the face-to-face science symposiums. If I read my memo correctly.
Yeah, I think we have you doing a bunch of stuff, so that's good.
I didn't read further than that, but okay. So I'm going to talk about this International Virtual Science Symposium. The website on the GLOBE website is at the bottom here, and it'll be on some of the other slides as well. This is what I look like. I'm not showing you my camera tonight, but I am the United States Country Coordinator, and I have my own partnership in New Hampshire, which is where I am based. The International Virtual Science Symposium as Kevin had mentioned, and Steve talked about briefly too, there's a definite difference between science fairs and what we have moved to with science symposiums, where science fairs are about judging the presentations and the projects and the research, and is really focused on that first, second, and third place, etc. What we're trying to really foster is an online space for students to share their research. And this year, our virtual science symposium is open to GLOBE students K through 16. So that includes undergraduates. So that's new because we haven't really had this category for undergraduate research before. There's rubrics for each grade level or grade span. And I'm not going to get into those different rubrics, but I will show you where they are on the GLOBE website. Last year's International Virtual Science Fair, because we were calling it a science fair at that point, these are some of the metrics for that. There were 105 total entries, 22 from North America. This was impressive, but we really like to increase these numbers. We learned a lot. The schools listed here were the ones that were from the drawing. And so one of these is Steve's student, how does the asphalt affect soil temperature? That was one of the sponsored, there was a small stipend to help get the students to the annual meeting in Estes Park. And there were 2 drawn from the US and 2 drawn internationally. And I'm going to talk about how the lottery worked in a minute. So again, what's new for 2017 is it is open to K through 16. We added a new badge, which I'll talk about the badges in a minute too, called Exploring STEM Careers. And we also have a later due date, where before it was in early March, now we're pushing that out to April 3rd. So let's talk about the badges. Instead of having a first, second, third place, students are still earning points based on a rubric, and the rubric comes from that Intel Science Fair rubric. So students that are doing research, they can submit it to Intel after they've, or before they've submitted it to GLOBE as well. We wanted to keep that consistency, but it's really focused on earning this badge. And there's no limit then to the projects that earn top ranking, which would be 4 stars. Some of the students, we may have 2 that receive 4 stars, or we may receive 20 that receive 4 stars. We're really going for quality based on that particular rubric. We have optional badges, and students are able to earn up to 3 out of the 6 badges. And I'm going to show you what those badges are on the next slide. It's important for students to describe how each badge is earned in their report document. These are the badges. We have a collaboration badge where they talk about how they worked together. There's a community impact badge, how what they researched impacts their community, or how they have impacted their community based on their research. Connection to a STEM professional. So the 2 young women talked about their collaboration with 2 scientists. That's something they could earn a badge for. There's an engineering solution. Engineering, we definitely want to include that in our student science symposiums. Exploring STEM careers, how your research relates to STEM careers, and also an interscholastic connection. And that's talking about collaboration. So with the drawing, somebody's got some feedback. With the drawing, You're entered into the drawing if you have earned 4 stars in the student research badge, and you have at least 2 badges, optional badges, other than that one. And then you'll be entered into the drawing. And then again, projects are from that particular drawing. We have these stipends, $2,000 internationally and $1,000 for US schools, and that's simply, that difference is because of travel, the cost of travel for each of those different locations. And those are to offset attending the national meeting costs. The website is up and running, and it has all the directions on how to enter. On the left side here are what you need to submit, and on the right side is an example. Everything is hyperlinked. Entries need to include an abstract, the report, a narrative on each badge, and then a presentation. The presentation can be a PowerPoint that's narrated, a video, or a scientific poster. So any of those would qualify. The other thing we need is a photo release. In early January, the upload tool for the virtual student science symposium will be available. Right now, we still have a way for you to upload your research reports, but the submission deadline or submission it's not open for submission yet. This is what that submission tool looks like, and it's pretty self-explanatory, and it has places for you to upload your poster presentation, to your photo releases, and to indicate what badges you have. This is an example of a poster. We have poster templates on the GLOBE website. There's other ones online elsewhere. You don't have to do a poster. There's definitely some things to keep in mind when you are doing a poster, but I just wanted to show you an example of one. And you can also go right now and look at examples of other student research entries and gain some ideas from there. When you go to the website of globe.gov/science symposium, this is the entry page, that landing page, and what it looks like. And it's a general overview. If you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the different categories underneath that with the rubrics, the resources, the FAQs. I'm going to actually show you what that looks like. There has been a change in the order. Instructions are now at the top. So here are the instructions about what to submit and the scoring, and also the awards. On the next page, this is just part of the badges. So this is a general for all projects, the overall report and what that looks like. Again, there's grade spans for each of the rubrics. So depending on what grade you teach, you're going to want to download that particular rubric. The scoring goes from report is submitted, but it doesn't have all the elements, and so there's no stars for that, all the way up to 4 stars. And these are descriptions of the badges. The next thing is resources, and there's a lot here. There's information on the previous virtual conferences. There's hyperlinks to creating a research project, and there's some really good things about citations. A lot of students didn't know how to cite their research. And so Purdue Online Writing Lab Research and Citation Resources is a new addition for this year. There's tips on preparing a presentation, data resources on how to retrieve and visualize it, and a lot of that is linked to our GLOBE resources already. So what we've done is, or what the Globe Implementation Office has done is try and consolidate all the resources that you and your students may need in order to produce this document, because they may be scattered in different places on the Globe website. There's also archived webinars. The one here is from this year, but the ones below this are these archived webinars on the bottom, from conducting field investigations all the way down to putting it all together with the science fair poster. And these are 1-hour webinars that were put together for the face-to-face United States Regional Student Symposium. There's some great FAQs, and it also includes, the first question is, why did the name change from a science fair? But there's definitely some of the questions that have come up as we've been learning about this process and what students and teachers need to know. We were talking about scientist participation, and we do have a form here where if there are any scientists that you know, or young professionals in science or STEM in general, they can indicate that they would be interested in judging or mentoring. And then we also have scientists that offered to mentor. And right now that list is growing as scientists indicate that they would be interested in mentoring. So this is a great place right from the International Virtual Science Symposium website for you to get a current list of scientists that have already indicated that they're interested. So the timeline is entries are going to be accepted in early 2017. There'll be announcements about that. The final due date is April 3rd. Scoring will be that last week of April. And then the badges are May 15th, and the live drawing is May 15th. So you should mark your calendar for the live drawing. And then the GLOBE annual meeting is July and August 2017. Here's the website again. And if you can also follow the links. If you go to news and events, meetings and symposia for the virtual science symposia, you'll find it there. And there'll be emails and announcements about future webinars on K-4 projects, and also more about the badges. There's also a webinar that took place earlier about the International Virtual Science Symposium that is archived on that first landing page. So you can also listen to that, which has a little more description about each of the rubrics. And that is all I have.
Thanks, Jen. Does anyone have any quick questions for Jen?
There was a question, are groups limited to 2 or 3 students? I actually don't know what the limit is. I do know that for our face-to-face one, we are going to have a limit, but I'm not sure if the virtual one has a limit. So that's a good question. We can find that out though.
Yeah, I think that's good to know. Oh, one question, does GLOBE want more science fairs to convert to a symposium format?
Well, we're not trying to compete with science fairs. I think that that's the big message, is we really want the peer review process to take place, and we want scientists and students to interact about research. I think that that's a really powerful piece of this, and less about the competitive nature and more about a high quality for all students or for more students, and showcasing that.
So our rubrics for virtual symposium, similar to the rubrics for the face-to-face symposium.
They are very similar. We are adding a piece about presentation and face-to-face presentation, which we didn't exactly capture last year during the face-to-face. So we do need to work on that a little bit more. But we do use the same rubrics for the virtual one and transfer that to the face-to-face. It was just really hard for the judges to use the longer rubric when they were in with the students. We needed a shortened form.
Right. Okay. All right, so let's we'll wrap up tonight's webinar. I'll share my screen. Let's see what we're doing here. So thank you, Jen, for your presenting that, and I think we're all looking forward to participating in the virtual science fair and symposium. See, I don't even have it in my mind yet. Have to beat it in, right? But that's our first opportunity to present, for the kids to present. So that's wonderful. So our next webinar will be November 9th at 8 p.m. And we're going to kick off the Urban Heat Island Surface Temperature Student Research Campaign, which that name has changed as well. Basically formerly known as the Surface Temperature Field Campaign, which is going to be in December. And so Jim's going to talk about working with his kids. And doing surface temperature observations. And then our NASA Nugget, I guess I meant to put this here. We're going to have James Lovell from NASA Marshall talk about his research in thermal remote sensing of urban heat island. So that'll be a great treat to have him come in. He was an early on GLOBE scientist. So he hasn't been working with GLOBE for quite a while, but it'd be nice to have him come back and maybe get him reconnected with us all. All right, and Jan's been posting stuff on the Facebook page. We also have a YouTube page where these webinars get posted if you ever want to look back on them. And if you have any questions, you could email Janet. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Had a good crowd, and hopefully we'll see you next time, 2 weeks from now.